Anytime we get a chance to visit with Laurie Levenson, we are tickled pink. Anytime you get a chance, when you turn on the TV, you're apt to see her. When you hear it, she is sought after and renowned for just giving common sense take on a lot of what's happening. We called because of some of the Supreme Court rulings that are going on. Laurie is a professor of law at Loyola Law School in Los Angeles and a legal commentator for Ready, CBS, CNN, ABC, and you get the point. Laurie, good to have you back on News and Views. How you been?
Oh, Joel, it's always great talking to you. I'm fine.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the Supreme Court ruling when it comes to President Trump and the East Wing of the White House. They said he can do it, or at least they said he could do it in part. What was your take on that ruling?
Well, it was just a very short order by the Chief Justice Roberts. They call it an administrative stay. And what the justice did was put on hold the lower courts who said that Trump had to stop the building, at least above ground. And Roberts said, no, you can keep doing that for now. But there was no explanation as to the reasoning, and this is not a final opinion. Trump, of course, is off and running. He's having workers work 7 days a week, 20 hours a day, because he's trying to outrun any court ruling that might come down against him.
Is that, or was that ruling a surprise?
I don't think it's a total surprise, given the Supreme Court today. They're usually doing what the president wants. But it's, I think, a disappointment and a surprise for people who think the law is very clear in this area that the president shouldn't be doing this.
So when you look at some of the issues that are brought to the public, whether it be through the Congress or whatever, is there a fairness to people saying, look, it doesn't matter if you do this, he's going to do whatever he wants because he has the Supreme Court? Are we, as the American public, apt to just say it doesn't really matter?
I think that's very dangerous, and I think some people are saying that. But if the Supreme Court doesn't matter, then we've lost a branch of government. And it's not just the Supreme Court, it's frankly the Constitution that says he shouldn't do this or can't do this, as well as Congress passed laws saying that he doesn't have the right to do this. So if the Supreme Court just turns a blind eye, they're eviscerating the power and the rules of the other branches of government.
I want to ask you about one other issue, Laurie, and I thought about this on the drive up today. I was thinking about how some of these rulings that have come down, these decisions by the president in regards to tariffs, and now we find ourselves in a major trade war with Canada. Many of us always believed that Congress had to play a role in all of that, in that this would be the perfect example of, no, he gets to decide whatever he wants to do. And I'm just curious what your take on that is, Laurie.
Well, ironically, the one case that stands out where the Supreme Court did rule against the president last year was, there was the birthright case, but the tariffs case, where they said you don't have the power, and he's doing it anyway. So it's a bit of whack-a-mole, and I think there's going to be a frustration over whether the president or the people who work for him really pay attention. Now, of course, that's what elections are all about, to see if the people are really just willing to say, we don't care anymore whether our representatives or our court have a say in what happens in our government.
But you understand constitutional law as well as anyone I get a chance to visit with. And when you look at this and the Supreme Court rules one way and the President of the United States says, I don't care, I'm going to do it, really what recourse or what strategy or what thing can you do after that other than have an election, which there's never going to be another election with his name on the ballot?
Well, first of all, the Supreme Court could take a stronger stance against him. Second, the people who surround him or are asked to do illegal actions could push back. That's happened with prior presidencies. But you're right, it's going to take the people saying, we want a president who does follow the rule of law and doesn't act like he's the sole decision maker for our country.
So in this particular case, we're talking about, to me, just a building. I mean, I get that. It is our building. The White House is a national symbol. It is historic, but it is a building in relation to so many other bigger issues here. I mean, I mean, this trade deal with Canada, for us that border Canada and the states that are listening to you right now, Laurie, that border Canada, this is devastating. I mean, this is going to hurt our economy like you wouldn't possibly believe.
No, I agree. Some people look at the construction and say, okay, it's just a construction site. And the trade deal is a much bigger issue. On the other hand, it all rolls into the issue of whether the president is willing to follow the law. Now, this was important enough for the Constitution to say he doesn't have this power, and for the Congress to pass many laws saying he doesn't have the power. So is it that sometimes we're going to enforce our laws and other times we're not? But coming back to your point, I think what is happening is the president keeps doing these things that shock people, and there's never enough time to get your mind wrapped around and deal with the latest one.
So you said something there, Professor Levenson, that jumped out at me, which was the people around him, the people that work with him and for him are doing illegal acts. Are they subject to any rulings? Are they subject to any punishment for conducting criminal acts?
Yes, under the law, they are subject to it. Again, who's going to enforce that? And I think we have to start thinking about the fact that what Trump has always relied on is his pardon power. And basically saying to everyone around him, don't worry, when I leave, you'll have a clean slate. Now, I do think that Congress, if the House changes, will have investigations. But of all this, it's kind of a vicious cycle of people doing what they can, waiting for the investigations, instead of doing the right thing the first time around. And when it affects so many people, as you said, this tariff situation affects more than one nation. It affects everyone. Then we shouldn't have to wait for who's at blame or whether there's enough blame to go around.
Yeah. I looked at the Roberts Court, and I don't know why I believed this, or at least thought maybe this might happen. But I thought Justice Roberts himself might be that vote, that common sense vote, you know, the one that is like, look, I'm not afraid of this man. I wasn't appointed by this man. And in fact, it appears that Justice Roberts has become much more of a conservative vote.
I think that's right. I think when he was, when President Trump first came in, people looked at the chief and said he's an institutionalist. He clerked for Rehnquist. He's going to uphold the independence of the court. And it's unclear why he hasn't gone that direction. I'm still waiting to see what history writes about what happened with Chief Justice Roberts and why, as you said, he made such a right turn.
Let me ask about the potential for Justice Alito or Justice Thomas getting off the court prior to, if the Democrats swing this election, if in fact the Democrats do get control of the Senate. Do you see a scenario where Justice Thomas or Justice Alito could say, look, I'm pulling the pin before all of this, before, in fact, the new Congress takes hold?
You know, I don't think that it's likely to happen. I mean, there's been some talk behind the scenes that if President Trump could get Senate confirmation for the justice's replacement, if you could get a younger Alito or, you know, a younger Justice Thomas, that maybe they would go ahead. But I'm not sure that they can bet on that at this situation. So as far as we know, both of them plan to stay.
What about some of the other appointments, Professor Levenson? We've got a federal district judge that was appointed to the Eighth Circuit here. His replacement was just named by the president, and his replacement is in his young 30s, has been practicing law for 3 years. I mean, clearly this was set up not with what your resume is, but with a how long can you live and are you conservative enough attitude. Do you see an appointee like that ever even being challenged by this Congress?
I think that the Senate has, given how polarized it is, I think that if the party in power puts somebody on, there's very little the minority power group can do to keep someone off. Now, you know, we've been seeing judges, and I'm not suggesting this judge in particular, do things that, you know, would disqualify them from the bench, or, I doubt we'd ever see impeachment hearings, but the Constitution provides for that. But the quick answer is no. I think that basically who we're seeing appointed to the bench very much is somebody who's going to be the Trump legacy for decades to come.
See, I don't know how you can, as the Senate, how you can find something to not confirm someone on when they really haven't practiced law yet.
Well, that's one of the arguments that are being made during the confirmation hearing, and it's something that should be taken seriously. There is the possibility, I think it's unlikely, that some of the judges who had these really strong opinions as they're on the bench will move more to the middle. But I do think it is the job of the Senate to take a look at the potential judge's record and say, does this person have the experience? Do they have the character? Do we trust that 20, 30, 40 years from now that they'll be fairly applying the law?
Yeah. Interesting. In other words, can we count on the Senate to do its job, which I think you know my opinion on that. Professor Levenson, thank you. Thank you for the time you spend with us and appreciate our conversations.
Thank you, Joel. Be well.
You bet.